I've done multiple episodes on Apple, on HTC, on Samsung. What about LG? Well, this is episode 38 of Tech with Josh, titled LG Was Weird, and I missed them. Let's begin. LG stopped selling phones a couple years back, and we needed them. We still need them today. Why? Because they were weird. What do I mean by weird? Well, LG's last flagship phone was the Wing. It's a phone that kicked out like the Sidekick did, and it was a dual screen phone. So what do I mean by kicked out? You hold the phone and you swing it from the bottom or the top, and it will go T-posing. So you have the big screen, the main screen, landscape, and then a smaller screen on the bottom, like a T. What was the point of this? Well, it was just a cool feature. It gave you gimbal controls, let you multitask, something that we all do now on our phones if you have Androids, so iPhones. But it was just a cool feature, and that's what LG was. They were always trying something new. Mind you, me personally, I've never owned an LG phone and used it as a daily driver or a secondary device. I've purchased LG phones though. I've purchased LG G2s for my siblings, LG G3s, G4, the Nexus 5, the Nexus tablet. All these are LG devices, a V10, V20, V30. So I've set them up. I was just never a fan of the LG software. But as I mentioned, they were weird. Let me go back in time. Back when I worked in Sprint, LG made some of the quirkiest feature phones. Samsung for Sprint had flip phones. It had the Samsung Instinct, which was a feature phone with a touchscreen to compete with iPhone. But LG had like the Fusic, the Music, MP3 phones with little MP3 controls on the cover, which was cool. They also had the LG Rumor, was Sprint's version, which was a feature phone. Feature phone is a basic phone, but it had texting, IM capabilities, and basic web browsing. So on the front screen of the phone, you had a normal keypad, 1 through 9, pound, 0, star, and a display with a left select and a right select for the menu on the left and menu on the right. And then you could slide it up. And you had a full QWERTY keyboard, so it was a texting phone. Phone was cool. The LG connector sucked because this was a time where every phone manufacturer had their own charger. There was no universal mini USB, micro USB, USB-C, Lightning, Apple 30 pin. No, every phone manufacturer had their own thing. But the LG one was so bad that it would constantly break on these devices. And we had to solder them back. But the phone was cool. Micro SD card. It's a feature phone. What made LG different is when Android came about. Sure, HTC, as I mentioned, made the Hero, the G1, the Evo. LG had the Optimus line, but they didn't really find their footing until a little bit later. So we had LG phones. They weren't really high-end. They were like the budget Androids. So it's basically the Samsung A15, A16 lines rather than the flagships. But LG created the G line. And the G line was not anything crazy. It was the LG Optimus G. But then the G2 came out. And the G2 and the G3 were amazing phones. 1440p displays. And this was a time where phones didn't have high-res displays. You had the iPhones with the Retina display on the iPhone 4 and the 4S. You had 720p panels, 1080p panels on the S4 that came out after the G2. But the LG G line created the knock code. So you can unlock it by tapping the screen in certain places. But here's the thing. The double tap to wake and double tap to sleep, LG made that. That was an LG feature. LG also was the first phone to have the buttons on the back for the power button and the volume button. And you might think to yourself, why is that important? Phones don't do that. They don't do that now because we moved away from it. Phones are thinner now. Back in those days, this was a big deal because guess what? My old Samsung S8, fingerprint on the back. I wonder where they got that from. A lot of Chinese phones did it also in the mid 2020s. But let's get back to the LG. LG, like I said, 1440p screens, knocks, removable battery, and another thing LG had, Google. As I mentioned, the Nexus 7 tablet was a Google collab. Google didn't make phones back in those days during the Nexus series. They had HTC make the first phone, the Nexus 1. Then they had the Nexus S and the Galaxy Nexus with Samsung. Those had AMOLED screens. And then they're like, you know what? We want to have a budget phone. And they created the Nexus 4. The LG Nexus 4, as I mentioned, LG is weird. They created this phone with the wireless charging, no 4G, but it was a decent phone at a cheaper price with a better camera than the Galaxy Nexus. But the main thing was the price point. You could get it for under $400 unlocked. And then they created the Nexus 5, which was a peak Nexus. For the LG owned devices, the G3 came out, the G4, amazing phone with a fake leather backing that you could put on. It felt premium. And then the LG Nexus 5X, which was a rehash of the Nexus 5 just with more RAM and better colorways. But there was a problem with LG. See, the LG G3, G4, and Nexus 5X had a problem where they would boot loop. And as I said, I never personally used a LG phone. My sister did though. And her phone was affected by the boot loop issue. And it's so bad that there was a class action lawsuit for it. So that tells you something. So LG does what it does. And they had to address it. And in the next iteration, they actually fixed the boot loop with the G5. And the problem is, the G5 was different. The G5 wasn't like the G4, G3, any of the Gs before it, because it was modular. The commercial was hilarious because it was just Jason Statham doing Jason Statham things. The battery no longer came off the back case. You press two things at the bottom of the phone, two little clips, and they pulled out. And you can attach a camera grip to it. You could attach different things, another extended battery. They had a couple of accessories, a DAC with Bang & Olufsen. But like I said, they were weird. They were trying certain things because they felt that modularity was the future. This was around the time that Motorola gave us the Moto mods. We also had the Project Aria phone that was trying to get built with the different mods you can add and remove. So this was the awkward teen years in smartphones. We're trying everything. But at the same time, LG had just put out right before the G5 series, a new series, the V series, aimed at more professionals, the V10. It had the great DAC for audio files. It had a second screen at the top. The main thing is it gave you full manual video control modes. Something that didn't come native on phones. Sure, nowadays you could have apps like Blackmagic Design, camera app. You have the Final Cut camera app, Highline. For photos, you have a bunch of different manual control apps now. But this came stock from LG. With the G6, LG dropped the modularity. They're like, hey, that didn't work. Let's make a sleek phone. And let's give away a Google Home. The original Google Home, they did a promo to give that away with a G6 purchase. So they tried different things. G6 was a decent phone. I still prefer the S8 that came out during that time, hence why I had an S8 Plus. Then the G7 came out, and they tried so many different things. They released a case that you can actually have a dual screen phone. And like it worked for a bit, but that's nothing crazy. What LG did before this time that a lot of people don't know is the OLED, the flexible OLEDs that we use in our folding phones like the Z Fold series, the upcoming iPhone Fold, the Pixel Fold, a flexible OLED with the G Flex series. Like I said, they're weird. Their mainstream phones weren't the best. They gave gimmicks like the boombox speaker that used the internal cavity on the G7, things like that. But with the G Flex, they had a phone that was curved. It was a huge phone at the time, curved phone. And the back, if you scratched it, it would self-heal. And you can place the phone down, and you see that it's not sitting flush. You can actually push the phone and make it flush. It was cool at the time because it's a flexible OLED device. And that's what we're using now in our foldables. And guess what? Just recently, a bunch of YouTubers got their hands on a LG phone that actually expanded with gears and everything to make it bigger. And that's what we don't have anymore. Innovation like that. The ideas are dumb. Don't get me wrong. I would never buy these phones. But it pushes the technology forward. Because if LG didn't create that flex phone, will we have foldable phones today? Yes, probably. But we wouldn't have the Z Fold 8 coming out later this year. We might have the Z Fold 3. But because LG did that, and they said, hey, we're going to try something different. We're going to think different. We're going to be a pioneer in weird stuff. And they'll get adopted. And that's what happened. Like I said, just double tap to wake, double tap to lock. Those are features from LG phones of the past. And HTC had the Evo 3D, while LG had the Optimus 3D. So they tried everything. 3D phones that nobody asked for or bought. Phones with styli built in the LG Stylo series for the older crowd. To use styluses, even though it's a touchscreen phone, a lot of older generations during the time were just adopting touchscreens because smartphones were the only phones you can really buy at the time. And LG had that. And that was great. And now, as I say in multiple episodes, smartphones are all the same. There's nothing to differentiate one phone from the other than the name brand. You buy a phone, the new version comes out. Oh, we have the new generation processor. It's faster, of course. Slightly better battery life. Slightly better camera. And AI features. You don't have someone getting on stage and saying, look at this. Look, it flips. Why? Why not? Oh, hey, this your phone? Put it here and it has a boombox built in. temperature sensors. Temperature sensor also. Hey, guess what? Here's a case you could put in there and get 2 screens. Because LG was just throwing everything at a wall. They were losing money, and that's why they're no longer around. But the impact they had on the market. They were a big player back in the day, especially during the feature phones, and with Androids, they kept up. The only problem is that lawsuit killed them, and honestly, none of the gimmicks were strong enough to make people want to buy the phones. And that's sad, because now you just have in the US, Samsung and Google, and with talks of OnePlus coming out of the market in the US and globally, I don't know if nothing or any of these small micro brands gonna have an impact like LG had. But that's it for this episode of Tech with Josh. Like I said, I never had LGs, but I enjoyed the phones from afar and from just playing with them. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya.